Hello everyone. Welcome to Git version control WebEx workshop session. And this workshop is conducted under Cisco's Incubator program along with Li2 technologies. And my name is Rajesh Hegde. I am a full stack developer and I have been using Git from a couple of years, you can say 2 to 3 years in my projects and even hackathons and in internships, etc. So Git is a must. Git is mandatory to know if you are a programmer, or actually you can use it to any kind of version controlling or maintaining your previous codes, etc. We will be learning more details in this session. So I will share my screen. Yeah, so let's start. So how the content is developed is there will be two sessions, and this is the first session which we will be having right now. And one more session will be after a break. And in this session, we will learn a basic introduction to Git and all the basic things. Uh, So I hope you have gone through pre-workshop PPT. In that, it had all the instructions to install Git and GitHub, create GitHub account, etc. Also, there was an optional exercise where you could apply for GitHub Student Developer Pack, and we will be learning about it in this session itself. So as for this session's content, it will be starting with introduction to Git and what are version control systems that are available, what are the types, etc. And next, we will begin with the installation, setup, and setting up on your local machine and creating a GitHub account and logging in, and then creating repositories. Repositories are something like directories on your local machine or computer. And we will go through all the common commands that are used in Git, and also about README file, markdown file. It's like a default file that opens when you open a GitHub repository. So after that, we'll see what is GitHub Student Developer Pack and what all it contains and what are the advantages. And next, we will go through something called GitHub Gist, and it's actually like linked with GitHub, and you don't have to create any new account for it. And we will have a fun exercise also. And so let's get started. So introduction to Git and VCS. VCS means version control system. So what is version control system? In software development, the code written in teams of developers, and anyone could write code from anywhere. And contributing to the same code base is like a must, right? And the best and most popular way to contribute code to a single code base is version control systems. So as you can see in this diagram, and you can take the scenario of a small company where there are three developers, and they will be writing code on their local machine, and they should need a space or a place where they can store all the things. Correct? They can store and they can maintain their code accordingly. So each one can write their code remotely, and it will be combined or it will be maintained as versions by the server itself. So this is where Git version control comes into play. And so what is Git? So Git is a free and open source distributed version control system designed to handle everything from small to very large project with speed and efficiency. So Git is a very powerful tool, and it's like a tool on top of which the websites or services are built. So in this course, we will be learning GitHub platform, and Git is like a core, and on top of that, there will be GitHub and etc. All other platforms which we will see later. And so as we explored about what is version controlling, and let's go into more details. So version control systems that allow us to contribute and merge different releases and stages of a software development without actually having to keep multiple files or folders. So you can store everything in a single repository. That's what you call in terms of Git, and it will maintain by itself. And they also make development within a team more manageable and less of a plan, as a developers don't have to trading folders or but rather communicate with the single source where all changes are happening and everything is saved. And what does this mean is, let's say that the same three developers will be same three developers be writing code in remote places, and the code changes made by a developer one should also reflect to the developer two, right? So that he will get to know what all changes he has done remotely. So what he will be doing is he will be writing his code and he will be putting it to the GitHub or any platform, and that same copy of the repository will be present locally on the developers 2 and the developers 3 local machine. So everyone will have a same copy of the same repository that is there on the GitHub or any platform. So it will be useful for all the developers to be in sync and develop a good code. And next, let's move on to types of version control system. And there are two types. One is centralized version control system, and one more is distributed version control system. And in centralized, and if you are aware of servers and clients, it's actually like somewhat same. In centralized version control system, the code base or project resides on one central place, also known as a repository. In order to make changes, people need to have access to the to that repository and write code in there. So they will have to like make a request and they will have to write code there itself. So they cannot write locally, and they won't have a copy of same code on their local machine like distributed, which we will see later. So this is like not used that much, but it's one of the type in version control system. And coming to distributed version control systems, in this, as I said, every single machine that is connected to the repository that is hosted on the server will have a same copy of all the files, all the logs, all the records, what changes have been made. So you can say it's like a clone of the same folder in everyone's computer or machine. So this is distributed approach where GitHub you can consider as an example, and we will be learning it in this course. So this is the image which shows the types of version control systems. As I said, there are two types. One is distributed and one is and centralized. So Git is a distributed, and is a subversion. There is it is centralized, and under Git, as I said, there are different kind of platforms. GitHub is one of them, and there is also something called Bitbucket. Also, there is GitLab. So all these are the platforms which run the under the Git. Git is like a core, and these are the platforms. So how Git works? Most version control systems work by calculating the difference in each file and then summing up these differences, and they can reach whatever version saved. But that's not the way Git works. So Git is very smart, and Git functions as a series of snapshots of your file system. And every time you change something in your file, and you will be committing it or just saving it to the state of your project, Git takes the picture of whole system, like you can say snapshot, and then it saves it as a reference to it. And if there is a file that hasn't been changed, then it stores a reference to snapshot, and we'll get to know how this most powerful feature works in the next concepts which we'll be learning. So what you can say is, if there are two files, if I add it to the GitHub, and it will have a snapshot, and it will get to know that there are two files. And if I change the first file, it will track and get to know that first file has been changed, and it will compare it with the old snapshot, and it will update the snapshot that this file was changed but the old file is same. So that's how it works in Git. So there are three stages in Git actually. Uh, these are named as working area, staging area, and repo, as you can see in the image. Here, repo means a repository which is on GitHub. And as per the stages, you can say working area is like your laptop or your local machine, and staging area lies within your laptop. That is like a copy of repository which is present on GitHub or any platform. So to be more clear, let's say there is a repository hosted on GitHub, and you have the same repository in your local machine. When you change something, you have to commit it, which we will see later, which you have to commit the file, and it will be moved to staging area. That means like it is ready to move to GitHub server, like that. So Git staging area is something like a workspace where all the changed files which are committed will be stored before moving on to GitHub. It's like a middleware, you can say. So this is a diagram which represents let's say there is one file, and it's called untracked in Git. And if the file which is already present on GitHub, and it's also present locally, and you don't have like you haven't modified it, then it's called unmodified file. And if you have changed something, then it's called modified file. So these are three types of files, you can say. And then this is the staged area. Doesn't matter have you if you have modified the file, or if you have created the file, you will have to comment what the changes you have made to the modified file, and you have to move it to stage area before pushing it to the actual GitHub repository which is present on the server. This you can say like a timeline. So that was a bit theory part about GitHub, and that says what and how GitHub works. And now let's get started with installation and setup, and logging into GitHub, etc. So as mentioned in the pre-workshop content, you can install Git from the official website, uh, and I have given the link here. even in the pre-workshop PPT. So when you go to this website, it will ask you to download the Git zip file, or you can refer the this computer here, which will tell you to download what machine. It will actually identify what machine you are on, and it will tell you to download. Then, and once installation is done, you can go ahead to github.com with your username, email, and password. I'm sure many of you present here will be already having a GitHub account and already know some stuff. But I'm considering all the participants and every beginner. Uh, this is the step you can say for them. Once you have created a GitHub account and also have installed Git on your local machine, then you can set up Git through your Git bash if you are using Windows, and Git can be worked in command line or terminal itself if you are using Ubuntu or Mac or even Fedora. So these are a couple of commands to set up your GitHub local environment, you can say. And there is something called git config in GitHub. So here you can see there are two commands. One is git config minus hyphen hyphen global username, and this is your username. You can add any name. And then one more thing, which is associated with GitHub, you have to link that email here, git config minus minus or hyphen global user email. So this will identify that this is your email and this is your username of your GitHub account when you are making changes, or when you are pushing something, or when you are cloning something from the GitHub. So let's move to GitHub actually. And this is the screen you will be seeing once you log in through GitHub. So it will ask you for your username and your password. And this is how it looks when you log in through GitHub, a new GitHub account. So on top right corner, you can see that there is a profile icon. And if you click there, there are a couple of other options too. And here you can visit your profile, you can see all your repositories, your projects, and even you can start other people's repositories and your guests, like that. These are the menu options you will be getting. We will be exploring everything in the demo also. And yeah, and there will be settings, help, and options to sign out. Let's move on to profile page. And this is how a GitHub profile page looks like. So it will have all the repositories that you have created, and also it will have a timeline where it keeps track of your coding comments that you have commented on a calendar timeline, you can say. And let's move on to your repositories. This is how a repository look like. So repositories are like a folders, as I said. You can create one and it will be like a folder, and you can store more files in that. So moving on, there is also something called GitHub Desktop, which we are not exploring in this session. Also, it's not recommended, because as a programmer, or if you want to keep track of everything from the command line itself, it's a good practice actually. It's and this GitHub Desktop is like a GUI interface for GitHub, and you will not explore how actually Git works, what are the stages, what takes place behind the scenes. So this is not like recommended, but I'm mentioning that there is also a GUI version which you can explore. So this is how it looks like. So basically, it's like a application running on your machine, and yeah, you can do all the operations that you can do in the terminal, but without commands. So to interact with GitHub, we will be using command line interface itself, because that's the good practice, and you there get to know how things work, right? So moving on next. So let's come to the basic commands of GitHub. So here, let's start with just two commands. And these are the steps to initialize your Git repository in your local machine. And if you want to clone something from the repository that is already there on the GitHub, this can be done. So I'll quickly show you how GitHub looks like, and also let's initialize the Git repository, and let's also uh, see about clone in the later section. For now, let's explore about GitHub, and let's see how it looks. So this is the interface you will get once you log in to once you visit github.com, and you will have to press on login, and I'll be logging in. So this is how GitHub looks like. It's like your timeline, and you will see all the activities that are done by your followers or the people who are following you. And this is how it looks like. So this is the sidebar where you will have options to create new repository, and also it will have all the repositories that are already there on your. Also, you can switch between the accounts if you have multiple accounts or organizations here. And let's visit our profile. So this is how our GitHub profile looks like. It will keep track of all the changes you have made during time on time basis. And yeah, let's move on to repositories. This is how all the repositories look like. And more options like followers, following, etc. So let's explore some random repository that is there. Here you can see that it is suggesting you to like explore or look at the repositories of other people, and you can visit them. So this is how a complete repository looks like. You can add a description and link, and you can add tags also what it is related to, and it will have all the changes that people are making in this repository. Here you can see there are 984 comments, and that means there are like lot of people working on the same repository. If you can see here, there are 30 contributors to this repository. So all the purpose of Git using Git is to make it very user friendly and very easy for all the developers who are coding on the same project, you can say. So they can contribute in the one repository, and Git makes it very easy for them. So as I mentioned, there is something called README file. They call it markdown file. And when you open a repository, repositories are stored under your username and also the repository name that you are creating. You can see the URL. That's where it is stored. And when you visit a repository, by default, the readme.md file will be open. So this is the file which we will learn and talk about more later. So to brief it, it's like a file which opens when you open a repository, and it will have all the contents, all the descriptions, all the contributors name, etc. for the current repository. You can see, right, all the information about this repository has been added here. So that's how GitHub looks. And as I said, let's initialize the GitHub in our local machine. And I will quickly move on to my code editor. So I'm using VS Code. And in pre-workshop, I have recommended to use this because using GitHub with this is very user-friendly. And also you can use any kind of editors, IDEs, but it's good to use VS Code with GitHub because it's very useful when you are working with the different branches and all, which we will learn in session 2. So let's get initialize it. Currently I'm in a repository called session 1, and in this I don't have anything. It's just a empty repository. You can see here, and I'll initialize the git here. So the command is git init. So it says initialized empty git repository in the location that I'm in. So what it did is it initialized a git in this particular repository, and whatever the files that I'll be adding is taken care by GitHub from now. And you can see that there is a empty folder created, or you can see not empty actually, a hidden folder created when you initialize git. And this is the folder where all the changes, all the new files that you add are taken care by. This is the this keeps track of all the changes, everything that you make. So all the remote repositories that are hosted on the GitHub will be connected with .git on your local machine. So I'll be clearing my terminal and let's get back to PPTs for now. Yeah, next, let's create some new repository. So firstly, we will be using GUI interface itself for creating new repository because it's good to get started with, right? So this is how to do it. Initially, you will have to move to a plus icon that you can see on top right corner, and you will have to click on new repository. Then it will ask you for a couple of details for your repository. That is your repository name, and it should be unique on your and description. And also you can select either it's a private or public repository. Then also it will tell you to initialize your repository with a readme file, which we have seen in the random repository that we opened. And this is completely optional. The README file cannot be, you can initialize it by default from here, or you can ignore this also. And also it will ask you to add a .git ignore file, which we will explore about it later. All and for now, let's just create with a repository name and a description, and let's make it a public repository, and also let's initialize with readme file. So when you click repository, it will create a new repository. So this is how it looks like. So here you will have description and your repository name. Also the markdown file will be open by default. So what you can also do is you can edit your files online itself. It provides a basic editor IDE, and you can create new files there. You can edit files, you can commit changes, etc. But you can't do all the stuff there, because if you're writing 100 lines of code, and if you're compiling and continuously executing with a compiler, then we will be writing code offline and then pushing it to GitHub, right? You can't expect a compiler to run on GitHub. Actually, it's a place to just store. There are platforms to run all the codes and all, but they won't store it. So this is the place where you can just store the files and keep track of all the files, that whatever the changes you have made. So once I have created a new file called newfile.js, and I've just added a console log statement, welcome, then it will ask me to commit this new file which I created. So committing is like adding a message along with the changes you made. So let's say I have added that console log, and I have to mention that why I have added it and what is the purpose of that file and why it was created, with title and description, you can say, in the GUI. So once that is created, you can see that new file.js is created, and it will update its commit. And you can see here that it's two commits now. Before it was one, because only initial comment was there when you create new repository. So moving on, you can also view your code on the GitHub itself. Like, it will provide a good looking color UI. You can say color code for each coding extensions, you can say. So since this is JavaScript, it's a console log statement. That's why it's in this color. So next, you can upload your files in the GUI itself. You don't have to push it from local machine. This is optional, actually. I won't recommend you to do this, because again, when there is GUI, you won't get to know what is happening behind the scenes, right? So, but there is an option to upload your files directly by drag and drop, and you can drag your files here or choose your files here. Here I'll be choosing one file called index.html, and I will have to commit the changes, why I made this, why did I, and then upload index.html, it appears in my repository. You can see here. I will show this complete demo, and you, as I said, edit it. You can view your file on the GitHub itself. Here you can see that HTML file is like colored according to HTML tags, and it's good looking also. And if you click on the edit button over here, then you can edit and make changes online. So here I'll be adding one more line, happy learning, and next I have to update in the comment that I have updated index.html file, and then now to keep. press on commit changes. Then that line gets added and it keeps track of that commit I made, that I have made changes in the index.html file. So now there are totally 4 commits. So first commit was when we created a new repository, and then next when we created a new file .js, and next is when we added index.html over file upload, right? So those 3, and again after uploading we made changes. So that's totally 4 commits. You can see there are 4 commits. Let's learn more commands, the common commands which are used in GitHub, and also learn about README file. So more commands in the sense, these are the commands that are like mostly used. These are the basic commands that you must know when you want to push your code to a repository online that is there on the GitHub. When you create a new repository, it will ask you to upload with a GUI, or you can add the code which is present in your local directory, which we will be exploring in the later section. For now, let's learn all the basic commands. So first command will be, actually this is like a third command, which the 2 previous commands were git init to initialize it, git in the repository, and also one more command was to git clone with the URL that we will see later. So this is third command, which is git status, and this is like checking the status of .git file that was created. When you execute git status, it will say if there are any new files, or also if there are any changes made to the files that are already existing. So this is to just check the status of git and look into the changes that was made. And next is when you create a new file, you will have to tell git that you have created a new file. So this command is to say or add your newly created file to git tracking. So it's git add file name, or git add dot will add everything. And all these commands are to check the difference between files which are not staged, and all also to reset the file that was already committed or uploaded. We will have a different section for these 2 commands, which are like undoing in Git and also merging, etc. In that, we will see these commands in detail. So next, as I said, git diff hyphen hyphen staged will give difference of what is staged but is not commented. And another common command which we will be using is git commit, and you can add a message there. So you have seen the GUI interface, right? In that, when we make any changes, we used to specify that what is the change we made, and why did I create that file for it. So here also, while pushing the code to GitHub, when you make changes, you will have to specify that this is why you this is why you changed this file, and this is why you have added this file. And next command is git push. So once you commit all the changes, you will be pushing the change to the repository that is there on the GitHub. So what Git push will do is it will push all the changes, and the new changes will reflect in the GitHub. And one more command is called git pull. When you make changes in the local repository, and if another developer is working on the same repository, and if he makes changes online, what happens is uh, you will have to update that code in your local repository, right? So you will have to, and it will fetch all the details that was changed by another developer online. And when you execute git pull, all the codes will be pulled down to your local repository and your copy will be updated. Coming on to README file, this is a markdown file, as I said, and it has its own syntax where you can use its syntax and represent the changes that are you want to show about or you want to mention about the repository. So you can create a well documentation by using the markdown file itself for your repository, because the purpose of GitHub is making everything open source. So let's say you're working on a project and you want to put it as an open source project, and you want more people to contribute. So what others can do is they can just visit your repository, then they can understand that this is the code and this is the project is about, and they can clone that particular repository and they can modify it and they can again contribute to your project. So these are like common syntaxes you can use for modifying the readme.md file. As you can see, there are headings same as h1, h2 tag, which we use in HTML. Also, there is listing. Also, you can embed images in the README file. Even you can customize your text by bold, italic, stripe, like that. And there is also ordered list, even unordered list. Also, you can provide the link to official documentations or whatever you have referred to in the repository. So markdown file is basically like you will have all the reference links, you will have a description of what is it about, etc. in the same project. Yeah, this is more about markdown file. You can actually add a block code also. Even you can embed codes in itself. And also, if you are writing a package or something, then you will have to specify the installation for the particular package, right? You have to provide a well documentation for your developed package so that other users, other people will get to know how to actually use it. So that's where README file is useful in. Next, let's move on to git ignore file. And as the name itself represents, it's a file to ignore the files that are already uh, present in the local repository, but you don't want to add it to your GitHub. So you can add those files to your .git ignore file and it will just ignore it. It won't push that particular file to GitHub. I will give you an example. Let's say you are using an API with the confidential API key that you don't have to share with anyone, but you want to push your code for reference to other people. So what you will be doing is you will be storing that particular API key in one file, and you will be exporting that file inside your project, and you will be using that variable. So API key is like a variable, and you will just have to use it in a right place to get the API working, right? So API keys are like confidential things for particular accounts. So you don't have to upload API key and make it public and all. So you have to add that API key file in git ignore, so that when you are pushing your code to GitHub, it will ignore that API key file and the rest of the codes work fine. So this is like a sample git ignore file you can see. Uh, when you are working in Mac machine, usually there is a file that is already created called .ds store, and this has to be ignored. There is no meaning if you push this file to GitHub, right? So this is just a file for Mac's reference that is created automatically. So this has to be ignored. Also, when you're working with node modules or npm package, you will come across this folder called node modules. So basically what it is there will be a file called package.json, which will have all the packages that you are using for your project. So let's say you are using 10 packages, and you will have to download them to get the things working, right? So downloading things and making it work will be limited to only local machine. Let's say you want to give this code to someone else. The downloaded packages size will be very much large compared to the code you have written. So how it works is the packages are listed under package.json file. If you are working with Python and Django, requirements.txt file, and you will be just passing that file, and users can just install all the same packages, and it will come under node modules folder, same as your local machine. And that's how it works. You don't have to give the large package folder. They can just download by themselves by looking at the packages. And there are also a couple of other syntaxes here. You can ignore all the files with .txt extension, etc. So this is how a git ignore file looks like. And as a recap, these are the most useful commands that we will be using in this session, or when you are exploring more about GitHub after this session. So you can say these are the basic must know commands. So they are git clone to clone the repository from a remote place, and git add to add your files to. If there is any questions or anything, feel free to interrupt me. So these are the takeaways you can say. These are the basic commands that git clone, git add, git commit, and git push, also git pull. And let's move on and make all these things in practical, and let's work. So right now I'm logged in with Li2 account, and let's create new repository. So to create a new repository, you will be going to the plus icon here and click on create new repository. and you will have to give it a name for the repository. And a description. Let's make it public and let's initialize it with readme file, and let's not add it git.gitignore file for now, and let's create it. So the new repository is created, as you can see, and this is the interface and this is how it looks like, correct? So branches are something which we will explore about later, branches and pull requests. And here you can see you can create new file, you can upload file, and also you can find the files when there are like hundreds of files in the repository. And this is the option which I was talking about, clone the already existing repository or the created repository. So right now I have created a repository. I will just create one more file called index.html here. And I will not add anything here for now. I'll add it locally. And if I don't commit any changes, it will take the placeholder you can see here by default that created index.html. And for now, I'll add it. Yeah, so the new file that was created is added now. As you can see, the file is here. And since Git keeps track of everything, you can see that there is a commit called created index.html file. So this is the description, and here you can add website links also. If you have a separate website for your package or you have developed, you can add it here. So this is how you create a new repository online. And also there is one more thing. There is settings options for your repository. You can see here that you can edit a couple of things here. And GitHub pages, we will be exploring it in the afternoon session. And this is the danger zone where you can like change the visibility to private or public, or transfer the ownership, or archive the repository, or just delete the repository. Also, you can share this repository with multiple people and start working actually, which we will see in the later section. For now, this is how you create a repository. And also one more thing, I told about git clone, right? Git clone command. And this is the place where you will have a URL by provided by GitHub that you can clone and add more changes to it. So let me just clone the current file that is there. So while cloning also, there will be two options. One is clone with HTTPS, and you can see use SSH. So SSH setup I'll be covering in the PPT right now. And after this, we can clone this repository. So you have to keep in mind that there are two kinds of setup in Git, which is SSH setup and remote setup. So if you have a SSH setup, it's well and good. You will be verified like with the repository that you're working, and it's also secure. If you are using HTTPS, it's also fine. let's see how SSH setup works. So SSH setup is like something you will be having two keys actually on local machine. One is private key and public key, and you will be uploading public key on GitHub. And every time you make a request, or every time you pull something, or every time you push something, to GitHub, it will verify that you are a verified user with the public key which you have provided to GitHub. So public key which is stored on the GitHub will verify the private key which is stored on your local machine, which should not be shared, and hence you will be verified like that. So here SSH setup is a bit complex in some of the systems. Here I have made it into steps, and you can also refer the documentation if you're Windows or Ubuntu system. Here I have made it for Mac. Initially, you will have to generate a key using SSH keygen command, and the type of algorithm that I'll be using is RSA, and you will study all these things in information and security concepts, the algorithms that are used to generate all the keys, all the hash values like that. So this is the time, you can say, complexity of the key that you're generating, and this is the email I'm adding, because this is my email that is associated with GitHub, and my key that I'm generating will have email ID. So the key gets generated. Next, I will see the key that I generated. There are two keys, as you can see. I have named it as git key while creating the key. And as you can see, there are two keys. One is private key without any extension, and one is pub key. Pub means public here, and this is your public key. This is shareable, and you can actually, you will have to upload this public key on GitHub in the section which I'll show now, and that's like it's shareable. You have to share this key with GitHub. So this key is copied, and then you will have to paste it in the section under your profiles. As I showed the profile page over here. Sorry, it's in the settings page. Over here, when you click on this menu option, you will have a drop down, and you will have to head on to settings, and you can see there is SSH and GPC keys. Here you will have to set up your new SSH keys that you are generating with GitHub. So here you will have to add new SSH key, and title and the SSH private key contents should be pasted here, and you will press on add SSH key. So this setup was done for my personal account, and that's how it like works. You will have to paste it, and that's all. And later, once that key is added, you have to tell your key manager that is running on the local machine. They call it SSH agent, and that you have added a key. And to verify this, you will have to run the following commands. You will have to run the SSH agent, and you will have to create one more file called SSH config, where you will have to paste some of the things provided by GitHub, where it will say allow all the hosts and the keys which are located in this particular directory will be uh, verified when there is a request, or you make a request or something like that. So these steps are completely like bit different for Windows and Ubuntu, but this is the step for Mac. When you add a config file, you will have to paste this content in the file, and then you will have to add the key. So when you finish this step, you will have to run ssh add -k for key, and you will have to locate that RSA file under .ssh root directory. So this will add your key to the key agent, which is actually maintained in the local machine. So once you do all these steps, you will have to verify with GitHub that your private key is present on your local machine and GitHub knows your public key. So you will have to ssh -t and git at github.com. So what it will do is it will make a request to this particular host and say that, hey, I have a key here, please like verify me or something like that, and it will print a nice message, say with your username and you are successfully authenticated with GitHub. So that's how SSH setup works. It's like a bit complex, and it's like completely optional. You can clone with HTTPS itself, but it's good to have SSH setup on your local machine. So next, let's
So SSH is more secure or what?
Yeah, you are right. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's like telling your terminal that you are pushing it to the verified place. When you are using HTTPS, it's also secure, but it won't be verified in your local machine, right? So it's more secure. Yeah, let's move ahead. So let me just clone the repository that I've created, session 1. You can see here, I can use either SSH or HTTPS. I will be using HTTPS here because this is different SSH setup for Li2 account, and I can use HTTPS remotely from like anywhere. So I will use that. I have copied the URL and I will go back to my code editor. You can see that there is no contents available, and right now I'll execute git clone and I'll paste the URL that I copied. So this is how the URL looks like. So when I say git clone, yeah, so the repository is cloned. You can see that under session 1, there is one more folder called session 1, which has my index.html file and readme file that was created online in GitHub GUI. So I will move to the session 1 directory now. I'll just clear my terminal. If you can see, the same files are present here. The same files readme.md and index.html file is present here, which is also present in the remote repository that we just created. So that's how clone works. You create something, or you use something that is already on GitHub and push it to a local machine, and you make changes here and then again push back to the machine. So now let's move on to next things, that is creating new repositories with terminal itself. So previously we had seen that we created all the files online, index.html, readme.md, everything was created online, but we didn't use anything for terminal. So now let's create a new repository with terminal approach. For this, I will log into my account itself, because you can see both SSH and HTTP approach when you are using GitHub. I will create a new repository quickly. So even while interacting with terminal, it's the same process initially. You will have to give a repository name and a description and whether to make it private or public. And then later you can initialize the README file or ignore it. For now, I will ignore it because I'll be adding everything from my local machine, and I will create everything in my local machine and then push the changes, right? So next step looks something like this. When you create an empty repository without initializing anything, it looks something like this. Yeah, this is how it looks like. So it will give you a couple of commands here to add from the command line or push the existing repository or import code from another repository like that. So here you can see there are two approaches. One is HTTP and SSH. So you can see that SSH is this host and HTTP will be like this. Like URLs will change, that's all. But the approach will be one is HTTP and SSH. So next, what create new repositories uh, locally, that is create folder locally and then add the files to the remote repository which we just created. So here we will make a new directory and move into the directory and just follow the same commands which GitHub has suggested us. So demo itself, you will have to initialize it, then add README file, and then commit changes, and then you will have to add remote that origin is this, and you will have to push it to the master. I'll just show the demo itself so that it will be more clear. So here is the repository that we created. I'm copying the first command and I will open my VS Code. So I will create one more directory. So right now there are two directories. I will move into demo session 1. I'll clear my terminal. So this is empty directory. There is nothing in this directory. So I'll just paste the command that GitHub had told me to. So what this command is doing is it's adding this hash demo session 1 to a new file that will be created automatically, that is readme.md. So it has added the contents. As you can see here, my VS Code will detect that I have created a new file here. And the contents is already added. So next what I have to do is I have to initialize Git and tell that this is where my origin begins to this particular repository. So what I'll be doing is I will initialize the Git in demo session 1 repository. So you can see that it is initialized and there is one file present called only readme.md file. I'll just clear out again. So next what we will have to do is I will have to commit my first change that I made. That is, I created readme.md, and before that, I have to add readme.md file to my Git stage so that Git will get to know that there is a file called readme.md. So for this, I will use git add. So it adds to the it adds to the Git tracking when you execute this command. So what happens is you can check the Git status that was there. I will quickly execute Git status. Yeah. So the Git status is telling me that there is a new file called readme.md. You can push this file to directly wherever you want, and your working area or your staging area has new file called readme.md. It will identify in the green. So next, I will be adding a new remote origin to my repository. We will explore about remote command later. You just have to understand that I'm telling this repository that this is where my hosted repository is present at, and please take this as your remote origin. So again, I added the remote, and as a next command, I will be pushing this file to the master branch. So this is done by git push command, and minus u upstream. That means this is the origin. This is where my code begins. This is my origin repository, you can say, root repository. So I will push the changes. Okay, it failed because I had one more Git file under the session one, right? It did not initialize it properly. So what I'll do is I will, okay, it failed because I haven't committed anything that I added this readme.file. So you can see the error, right? It's not matching, like it was saying before that there were no comments yet. So what I will be doing is I will clear out again. When I see the git status, you can see that this is the new file, but I haven't committed it. I forgot to commit it, that's why it failed. So this is like the thing which we made in the GUI, that when we created a new file or when we executed some modifications to a file, we had to specify in the title and description format that this is why I added this. This is why this file was created. So this is the comment which we are making. So I will just say created readme.md file, and as a description I can add one more message to the same file, that this file was newly created, like that. So right now you can see that it has committed the changes to one file and it is ready to push now actually. And I have added the remote already, and you can see after this you are supposed to add this command. If I execute it again, it will say origin is already exists because I have added the origin already. So as a final step right now, we will be pushing all the changes that we made. You can see that it's asking me for the password because I have SSH linked with my Git, and it will verify in the local machine also before pushing the changes. Yeah, so the files are pushed. You can see that there is a new branch created. That master is pushed to the origin master, and you can see these changes here. So previously it was like this, right? When I now refresh it, you can see that readme file appearing here. So this was my first commit made to the particular repository that I created. I hope this is clear. This is the initial step when you are creating or adding file to a new created repository from your local machine. So let's quick. So this is a very important step that we completed, that creating a new repository. All the commands that are shown in the PPT, the commands, I have created a sample.js file here, and then I have checked the Git status that it says there is a untracked file called sample.js, and added that sample.js file. You can mention git add dot and it will add all the files that are newly created, or you can specify the file name too. Git add readme.md or git add sample.js, like that. Then before pushing, you will have to commit why you have created it or what did you do, like that. So here I have mentioned that I have created a sample.json file and I'm pushing it, and you can see the changes online. So one more thing about git pull command I have shown here, which we can see here also. And a pull works when you make a new changes in the GUI. Let's make it right away. I'll show in the demo itself. So you can see that this was the first line that I added from my terminal, and I will add one more line. This is my second line. So it will ask me to commit changes again because I made some changes here, right? So if I leave it default, it will take updated readme.md file as a commit. So you can see that second line has been added online in the online GUI. Now you can see that there is second line present in the readme.md file. But line locally, right? So in order to get that line locally, you will have to pull the changes that was made online. This scenario you can say as there are like two on the same repository, and developer one has made some changes and they have pushed to master branch, and developer 2 after he pushed the code has modified something in the master branch itself, and then developer 1 should know that he had made a change and he should have the same copy in his local machine also, right? So without making any changes, like without starting to make any changes, he should execute git pull first before doing something. So when I execute git push, git pull, you can see the second line is added automatically because it fetched from a remote repository and identified that there is no second line, and it has pulled the latest changes that was present online but not locally. So that's where git pull is useful for. You can pull the uh, code that is already updated online but not locally. It will also say that what are the insertions and all. You can say that line readme.md file there was changes, like there was a modification here and there are two insertions and one file change. So according to GitHub, these are like two insertions, two lines, because this is the one line and this is next line. So it will consider as two insertions. You don't have to worry about the message it is giving, but you just have to git pull and it will update the changes. So next, once we have pulled all the changes, this was for cloning the repository, which we have already seen. This is clone. So what this repository gets deleted and I will have to like pull the code again. Even I can do that. Let's say this repository is done. Like let's say you're working on a project and it's done. You have added all the code to GitHub, but the problem is you have deleted your repository code offline. And what happens is you can just and you can clone the project again and then start continuing it. So that's also one scenario where you can say that git clone command is useful. Yeah, this is again about the git clone. We have seen this in the demo itself. Next, let's talk about GitHub Student Developer Pack. And I recommended this as an optional step in the GitHub PPT section because this is an optional thing which you can apply as a student and take advantage of GitHub. So what is this GitHub Student Developer Pack? So GitHub Student Developer Pack is one of the best resources that you will get as a student, start or development to access free services and GitHub's pro features such as private repositories. Also, you will get different access to other tools and services provided by different platforms. So I highly recommend this to apply for GitHub Student Developer Pack because you will get a lot of free services which you can explore for free, and also you will get a pro badge on your GitHub account and you can start using private repositories also. In actually in free account, if you can see that you can't create a private, or even when you are hosting something which we will see in the last section of this course, you can't keep your repository as private when you are hosting something. So it has to be made public and then hosted. Hosting is basically for static websites in GitHub. We will dive into deep in the last section. And what is the eligibility? As I said, if you are a student, almost all present here are like 13 plus, and you are eligible to apply. And you will have to apply with your ID card and other details which I have mentioned here. Even it's there in the pre-workshop PPT, and you can fill these details and you can submit this form, and you will get verified by GitHub in a couple of days. It sometimes take a week or more than that, but you will be verified. So let's like see in brief what are the like services that we will be getting with the GitHub Student Developer Pack. So if you're aware of the domains, you will have to pay for it for how many years you need. So with GitHub, you will get two different services that is offering you 1 year free domain. Like you can take your desired domain if that is available for free for 1 year. And you can see like there are multiple services that are available for free, and there are different credits provided for each platforms. Microsoft Azure, JetBrains, all these IDEs are free if you are applying as a student developer. Then DigitalOcean also you will get some credits, even Heroku. All these things you will explore, and it's a good thing to have a student developer pack in along with your GitHub account, and it's very useful to use these services in your hobby projects and hackathons and all. So as I said, I highly recommend this. You can see there are many services that are linked with GitHub. Yeah, it's never-ending list. Yeah, so please go ahead and apply for this if you haven't already. And that was about GitHub Student Developer Pack. And next, let's move on to GitHub Gist actually. What is GitHub Gist? As I said, you won't have to create a new account for your gist that you are creating. Gist is like a file that you are dumping somewhere, and you can say like a rough work. You can use it as a rough work also. It's like a place where you can write all the rough draft files or draft codes, or also if you are embedding your code into your medium article, or even in your html page that you are developing, you can do this. So every gist repository, every gist is a git repository, which means that this can be cloned or fork, which we will cover in the session 2. Fork is like copying else's repository into your repository. And yeah, that's how gist works, and it comes with along with the github, and it's same as repository. And if you want to explore about more, you can visit gist.github.com, and it will have all the gists that you have written, or you can create a new gist. And all you can all you can follow to get started with is sign up with github account and navigate to gist home, and you can see that the page looks something like this. Yeah, so you can just add a file with the extension, and you can create your gist directly right here. And you can add sample gist with the extension. Here I have not added the extension. By default it's txt. And you can create with two options actually. One is public gist and secret gist. If you want to make your gist public, that the code you're writing, draft you're writing public, then you can go ahead and make it. Or you can also create a secret gist also. It will be private. And it's the same as a repository, and you can always embed it, or you can download it as a zip, or there are a couple of other options also. You can clone this, you can star this. Star means like adding it to your star list. You can reference it later, like that. So I think that's almost the end of session 1. Uh, I think GitHub Gist is clear. It's very simple. You just have to write and create. So next, we will be performing a small exercise. If there is any doubts before this, I'm very happy to answer this. Any questions that if you guys have, or else let's just begin the exercise itself. Any participants they're present can respond, or we can have a poll.
I think we can go for the exercise. I don't have any doubts.
Yeah, sure. Let's get started with the exercise. It's a very simple exercise for a very to get started with, you can say. And it says, I will briefly tell about what it is and what you have to do, and that's all. That's about the exercise, and I will perform and show you the solution to it in the after like a short break. And yeah, let's read it out. So create a repository in GitHub with the readme.md file, and clone the same repository and create a new file inside the clone repository. I think like this is already shown in the demo part, and you should be able to understand the process, I guess. So you will just have to create a new repository online and then clone it to your local machine. Okay. Then you will have to add your own code, or you can make some changes to the created repository, or you can all add some of the code or program that you have already written to the same repository, and you have to git add, git commit, and git push the changes to master branch. So that's all about the first exercise. It's like you can see the flow chart, right? It's just creating a repository on GitHub and then cloning it to the local machine and then adding new files, then again pushing back to the same cloned repository on your profile. So I think this is clear. If there is any doubts on the exercise, you can ask me. Also, there is optional thing. If you are already, as I mentioned, if the code you want to upload the previous code which you have already written, you can obviously do that. So it's very simple exercise. You just have to create a repository, clone it, add some more files to it, and then push back the changes. So if there is any doubt regarding this, or if you have any doubts regarding Git setup or something, you can go ahead and perform. After that, we can see the output, whether you are able to create it or not in the poll here itself. So I think I will give around 15 minutes for this exercise, 15 minutes break, you can say. And then again, let's come back and complete this exercise. And then that's the end of session one. And after that, break will be from 1, and 1 to 2 will be our break, and we'll begin our second session from 2 o'clock. So is that all right? Any doubts? Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So you can take a screenshot of this, or I will keep the screen sharing like this. Uh, I'll keep the screen sharing like this. You can refer this and you can complete the exercise. Okay. We'll come back after 15 minutes. Also, one more instructions to like Windows users. If you are using Windows, then when you install Git, there is something called Git bash that is already installed when you press on installation steps. So I recommend you to use Git bash. Even on the terminal, Git command should work fine. If it says Git command not recognized or something, just search for how to add GitHub path to your root terminal that you're using, or else you can just use git bash, which will have all the git commands. So I would suggest Windows users, if you are getting those errors, then you can go ahead with git bash that is already installed, and you can perform all the git actions over there. So again, to brief about the problem statement, it's about creating a repository online and then cloning the same, and then adding more files, and then pushing the changes again. So let's go ahead and do it. I will go to github.com and I will create a new repository, and exercise 1, I'll make it exercise 1, and you can refer, commit for changes made. I just added a simple description, and as I said in the problem statement, you should initialize with readme file. So I'm initializing it, and yeah, the repository is created. You can see the repository is created, and this is the first step. And next step would be to clone this repository. So before I had shown you with HTTPS, right now I will demo SSH. It's almost the same, but the URL will just change, that's all. So I will open my terminal and I'll go back. This is the session 1 folder, and I'll create one more folder called exercise 1, and I will go into it and I will git clone, then paste the SSH URL, correct? And when I press enter, the entire repository that was created is cloned. You can see here under exercise 1, there is one more repository called exercise 1, and the same things are here. You can see that refer commit for changes made, right? So this is the second step, cloning the repository. And let me clear my terminal. So this was the second step. And third step would be to make more changes or add more files into this same repository, right? So what I'm going to do is I will create a index.html file. So I have created a new index.html file, and let me write some HTML here. HTML, I'll just use a plugin which will complete my HTML tags. So let me remove this. I'll just keep title exercise 1 and body h1 tag saying local machine. So this is just a example file that I created and then I added it here, right? So if I move to the folder that was created by me by cloning, if I say git status now, let me expand this. Git status, yeah, it will say that a README file was modified because I moved this to next line, or when I press save, it automatically indented. And also it says there is a untracked file called index.html. That means Git is not aware of this index.html file. So in order to add this to Git, we will be using git add command, right? Add, and as I said, dot will add everything that is there in the present working directory under git, and it will add that index.html file. So now if I check git status, it will say that readme.md file was modified, and there is a new file called index.html which is newly created. So next step would be commenting the changes that I made. So for that, I'll be using git commit -m to add the message created index.html file. So this is my commit. So the comment has been successfully added, and if I see my working area now, if I press git status now, it should not give anything because I have added everything to git staged area. So there is nothing pending in my working directory. That means everything is ready to push to the GitHub, right? So now, since previously it was cloned from origin master, I can just push to push the changes that I just made, and the changes will reflect online. before, if you remember, you had used git push and minus u and upstream, that is, and like master origin, so that you will specify that you are pushing it to origin. And also we will explore about the branching and all those stuff in the afternoon session. And that is completely a different advanced topic. So for now, we are pushing everything to master branch. That's the default branch, you can say, when you create a new repository. So last step would be to push the changes that I just made. So it is git push. So it will execute and it will push all the changes that I made locally to the repository that is there in the GitHub. So I will minimize this, and if I refresh this now, you should see index.html. So it added commit that I created index.html file, right? And yeah, that's about the simple exercise, and that's how it worked. So as a summary, we initially created a repository by visiting our repository section and created a new repository, and then we added in a readme.md file while creating the repository itself, and then we cloned it. We went back to the terminal local machine, and then we created index.html file, and then we made some changes into the file, and then we added the file so that git will have a track of it, and then we committed the changes that we added index.html file, and then it was ready to push, and we executed git push command, and the changes were reflected here. About the first exercise. Hope you understood. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Now we are almost at the end of this session. So let's quickly see what all did we learn in this session. So initially we started with Git and version control systems, brief introduction to it, and then we explored about installation steps, which we have already performed in the pre-workshop, and we logged into GitHub. Then we created repositories both in GUI and added files in the GUI. And also we created repositories in GUI. And then again, we cloned the repository and added more files to it and then pushed it as we did in the exercise now. And we learned about readme.md file. So it's a file where you can showcase your package or your project, and you can add the description that this is the project and this is it about, so that other developers who will look into it will understand that this is the project and this is the technology he has used. So next we saw about GitHub student developer pack, and please go ahead and apply for it if you haven't already. And lastly, we saw GitHub Gist, and it is very useful if you are writing your code and embedding it into your HTML files and other articles. So that's about the first session, and we performed an exercise where we cloned the repository and we pushed the new code to the repository that we created, right? So also one more thing, in the current industry scenario, to showcase all your codes or what kind of codes you write, you can just attach your GitHub profile with resume, so that the HR will look into your GitHub profile, and he will look into your projects that you have done. And if there is a README file, he will easily understand what is it about. So it's highly recommended to know Git and have a GitHub profile these days, and it's well organized, and you have your all current working projects or ongoing projects there. So as a suggestion, this is a must, and please build your GitHub profile as well, and you can attach it and make a good profile and showcase your code and work, so that it will be easier for them to analyze what kind of code you write, right? So I think that's about the first session. If you have any questions, you can ask. Feel free to ask any questions on the session one if you have not clear about any topics. So the PPTs will be uploaded on the same Cisco Incubator WebEx site where you had registered tqb.li2.in. You can find the PPTs, you can find all the slides there. You will find all the useful commands there. And in the session two, at the last, I have attached official GitHub documentation as well, and also some of the useful links. We will see that in the second session, and that's about the course materials. It will be provided in the website itself. You can go through, or if you did not understand some topics properly, you can go through the slides and you can revise. So if there is any questions, we can go ahead for it. Any questions?
I understood everything properly. You explained it amazingly.
No questions, man. It was really good.
Thank you. If there is any questions or something, you can ask now, or you can join the afternoon session to learn some advanced Git topics, because the things which we covered are very basic. And if you were already a Git user, and you will have all the knowledge of all the basic things which we did in the session one, and session two is completely based on branching collaborations, how to work with teams, and also static hosting of a website that you can use it for your portfolio on GitHub. And I will show you a couple of examples and themes as well. So it's going to be pretty useful and fun. So please attend the second session also in the afternoon, and it starts from 2. Let's start at 2. Yeah, if there is anything, you can let me know here, or we can end the session 1. All good? Any questions?
No question.
No, I think we can end.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks all the participants for attending the session. And again, this workshop is conducted under Cisco Incubator. And thank you everyone. Let's see you. Let's see in the. Let's continue in the session 2 for more cool stuff. So till then, thank you. Bye.